Welcome back to Unscripted, carwash.com's video interview series connecting you with market leaders. Joining me once again on Unscripted, I'm happy to welcome Eric Wulf, CEO of International Carwash Association. Eric, it's always great to see you.
Hey, Rich, you're kind to have me, and happy holidays to you and your family.
Yes, happy holidays. So we're recording this interview here, Eric, in early December. What is it like at ICA in early December as we're turning the calendar here to 2023? You know, the big show is about 5 months away in the U.S. in Las Vegas. We look forward to that for sure. But is the association back to its pre-pandemic normal schedule, or are you feeling any lingering effects either in the US or overseas from COVID or any of the other headwinds that we saw this year?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And we're thankful that, I mean, really 2023 next year will be in many respects the first time it's back to normal if you're thinking about event scheduling and patterns. Of course, we had the show in the regular springtime in 2022 this year, but we had just had a November of 21, right? So you had that 6-month repeat, which was unusual. So we're thankful that next year in the spring, we'll have it back to the regular pattern, roughly a year after the last show. But probably like everybody else you do with these interviews with, it's not back to pre-COVID on anything, right? I mean, everyone's busy. We're very thankful. The industry is busy. The show is looking quite busy. It'll be the largest floor we've ever had next May. So that's fantastic. We're very happy and thankful for the progress on the online manager training program we've been doing called LEAD, which is only a couple of years old, but that's been going great. And a lot of the growth we've had is on that digital side. So, you know, online training, a lot of the online storytelling that we've been doing that you're aware of. It's been a busy time, but then again, so is it for every car wash operator and supplier.
Yeah, it's great to hear, and so much value in these events and trade shows. I just wrote an article in the last issue of PC&D, Eric, and one of the people I interviewed was John Roush over at Express Wash Concepts, and he kind of made the remark that the good operators are good for a reason, and whether it's Justin Alford down at Benny's in Baton Rouge or Tom Hoffman at Hoffman's Car Wash, you know, the list just goes on and on. John Roush certainly fits in that category, but year after year, you know, you obviously see a lot of new faces at these events, but those good operators are there supporting the industry because they know there's always something new to pick up or see or learn. So if it's good enough for the good operators out there, it's certainly good enough for people out there who haven't been in the market for decades to learn about our market and get involved. So much value in those shows, and thank you for all the efforts that you and the team put into them.
Oh, thanks. And thanks for coming and wearing out your own shoe leather on the floor. We appreciate that. And you mentioned 3 great names. I mean, all 3 of those folks have been on the ICA board. John got started in the business. I mean, look where his company and the Wildcat platform are now. You know, John came to the New Investor Seminar years ago, and now look at what that has happened since then. Justin Alford will be our president, our board chair next year, beginning in 2023. So yeah, this time, I think the headline for the last 5 years and what's exciting about the business is it's the technology. Yes, like we can wash cars better than ever before and produce equipment better, but it's the people. It's really talented people and talented teams. I mean, just really professional, smart experts in all sorts of functional areas coming into car washing.
Yeah, just be sure to wear those comfortable shoes that you mentioned to these shows. There's a lot to see and a lot to do. But now that I've name dropped enough on you, Eric, let's turn our attention. You know, one of the words that we saw in that article I wrote this month, the word cautious, and especially in Q3 and Q4 this year, kind of the word that we printed a lot was headwinds, right? So countries dealing with low unemployment but high inflation. So from your perch up at ICA, Eric, what was the mood of investors specifically in this car wash market in 2022?
Well, you know, listen, you and I both will knock on wood, and we don't want to tempt fate at all, but boy, aren't we fortunate to be in the car wash industry. I mean, honestly, since before COVID and straight through it until today. So yeah, I mean, inflation is high. cost of goods is going up, supply chain is still a bit of an issue, but I mean, this industry, I can't think of many doing better. And I guess if you think about the health of the industry, I might suggest there's at least two ways to look at it, largely dependent upon your timeline and objective, right? So if you're someone who's been focused on scaling up your business and maybe acquiring or selling your platform, or the next transaction with institutional investors or private equity, where the market is at is really important, and finding the right place in the cycle for you to acquire or sell or do your next transaction is a big deal. But I think, listen, that's going to come and go. That'll do what it does. I think the really important thing is the business profitability has been maintained. You look at operating margins, right? So set aside the balance sheet for a minute and all the Wall Street stuff, and just look at how the wash is doing on the P&L as in general. And I think the good news is, during gas prices, during inflation, and again, knock on wood, profitability has been maintained. Critically, membership subscriptions have maintained, generally speaking, right? We haven't seen churn kick up materially. So that's at the end of the day, I think, what keeps the industry healthy, and all of those have been positive, generally speaking, right? And temp fate and all that stuff.
Yeah, generally that's great news to hear for sure. And Eric, one of the topics I wanted to catch up with you on today is our top 50 list, which we produce each year, and we actually just released that on carwash.com not too long ago, and just some of the interesting findings. Almost 200 locations to make the top 5 now. For those who are unfamiliar with the list, this is a list of the leading U.S. conveyor chains out there, just based on their number of locations. So we're seeing almost 200 locations now to make the top 5. 12 companies are in triple digits now, Eric. When we look at the list 5 years ago, only 2 companies had 100 or more locations. So quite a bit of change in 5 years. The top 8 have 150 more locations, and the top 50 operators combined now operate over 3,700 locations. So those are some of the changes. I don't remember, in doing this list for the past 10 years now, this year's list seemed to have the most amount of changes in terms of number of locations. So when we turn our attention to the top 50 list, and I hope you had a chance to review it at this point, but what are your initial reactions when you're seeing some of these changes taking place? And is there anything else that stood out to you on that list?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to thank and congratulate you at PC&D. You do a great job with this list, and both it's incredibly valuable information for the industry, and also I'm sure it's not easy to put together every year. So kudos to your team on that. I think as I look at it, listen, I think the numbers are what they are, the names are, we know what that is. I think generally speaking, the macro trends are the same over the last 3 years. You see a lot of aggregation at the top in terms of they're growing at a very nice and healthy clip, and you're seeing a little bit of separation in the pack, right, at the very top versus the middle. But I guess what I wonder about and think about is interesting to me is sort of that, I'll call it the middle, and you can define that in lots of ways. But let's say in starkest terms, it's not the single store operators and it's not the publicly traded companies, right? But I think there are so many people who have entered this industry. Let's say they are in that, I'll pick as an example, that 5 to 10 store, 5 to a dozen store, something like that, who have come in the last several years, and they've gotten going fast because maybe they have a background in development or store operations and construction and retail. So I think actually I would think that perhaps many of us aren't giving that enough attention. It's easy to look at the biggest, right? But it's those in the middle that they've gamed up fast. I mean, they have a profitable, competitive platform, smaller, but competitive platform with smart people and capital, and they're ready to go and they know how to build them. And so I look at the top because it's interesting and we all want to see what's going on, and your reporting helps us understand that wonderfully. And then I love to look at the bottom. And then I try to wonder, well, who might be the next tranche below even that? Because I think that's the future of the top list. That's who the biggies are looking to acquire. That's where there's tons of talent and opportunities in that middle section, call it.
Yeah, just speaking of the bottom, the baseline this year was 18 locations. So not too long ago, that was in the single digits. But yeah, just on that point, Eric, I remember years ago, Robert Andre from Sonny's Car Wash Factory, maybe it was back in 2014, 2015, and he kind of gave me the heads up, Rich. We used to have investors come in here and want to open maybe one or two or three locations. Now we're having investors saying they want to open 10, 20, just one car wash that comes to mind on the list. Love Car Wash. I think they announced that they were actually becoming a platform at your show in Las Vegas in November, not the last show, but the one before that, and they're already up to over 70 locations. So it's I hear what you're saying, and it's very interesting. Yeah, we that list is fun to put together, and it's interesting once it comes out for sure. So,
Well, and I'd say, Rich, if you don't mind, just to build off that,
yeah, good.
You raise an interesting point or observation. So Robert's comment is dead on. There's people ready to go and they have the expertise to do it, and that wasn't a phenomenon 10 years ago. The flip, though, the other side of that coin, I think, and this is something we spend a lot of time talking with people who either visit the show or contact us or reach out about getting into the industry. You could almost argue it's never been, I don't want to use the word dangerous too loosely. I don't mean to scare people unnecessarily, but to some degree, depending upon your net worth or capital, it's almost a little more risky to get started with one now, given the dynamics in particular of subscriptions and networks, right? So that's, I think, another big difference. People are coming ready to do 6 stores pretty quick. Let's pick a number. But the people who are coming to do one, boy, I think they have a lot more to be concerned about, even with great operating margins.
For sure. Yeah, that might be a topic for a whole nother interview here, Eric, for sure. So, yeah, going back to the top 50 list there, we see so many.
Off track, Rich. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. So, in terms of benchmarks to make the top 5 and the top 10 and the top 50, we talked about them a little bit here. So, do you have any predictions? I mean, I hear the number 1,000 being thrown around, like it's so easy to get to 1,000 locations, right? Is that practical in your mind in I don't know, the next 5 to 10 years? Do you have any other predictions on what this list might look like in 5 years?
I'll give you I'll give you my easy answer, which isn't real sexy. Is just, I think it's a continuation of where we're at, meaning that I think the biggers will get big. I think it's reasonable to expect there's going to be 3 to 5 that have, maybe a third to a half of the market share eventually. And why do I say that? I don't have a crystal ball, but looking at other industries and markets, and honestly, even looking on the supplier side of the car wash industry, right? Look what's happened with platforms on that side and what we think might be market share, a little more opaque, but roundabouts, right? So I think that's maybe a little more of a normative place that this industry might land down the road, is that kind of market share and that kind of size. And then, but at the same time, you look at the list and you say the largest around 400 odd stores or so, and then you think, where could they get to 1,000? That's real work, man. I mean, even buying them is work. Forget the cost of that, but finding those stores, getting them into the pipeline, getting them integrated into your network, that's a lot of work. And then if you're thinking greenfield, to build them, also a ton of work, right? So the march to 1,000, I guess I'd say it's inevitable. I believe for most industries where we're headed, it's inevitable we'll have 1,000 store chain. But how they get there and how fast they get there, I think maybe there's a bit of a diminishing velocity at some point once you get to a certain size. There aren't a lot of 50 store, 20 store chains as much to grab as there were 10 years ago. At least not that maybe have gotten that are easy to acquire, let me say. So it'll be interesting to watch what it looks like from 400 or 500 to 1,000. But I'm dancing around your question because I don't have an exact answer.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, just in the article that I wrote, a couple of these people, a couple of the industry experts that I interviewed were mentioning a lot of these chains are shifting from merger and acquisition focus to more greenfield development. As you know well, Eric, it takes time for zoning and permitting, and it might take several months, if not over a year, to get a car wash once the shovel's in the ground to get it to grand opening. So yeah, that's might seem like a slower process than acquiring, let's say, a 20 chain store like we saw with Mister and Clean Streak there. So, all right, good. So my final question for you, Eric, is speaking of green fields, what a nice transition. We're seeing about, I think the industry statistic is about 800 or more new locations being built. Is that kind of what you're hearing too? About 800 new locations, conveyor locations,
Yeah,
or
I
car
think
washes?
yeah, I think most people would tell you we're somewhere in that 800 to 1,000 per year of late. Yeah.
Yeah, so in your opinion, when you look at the industry, has technology and supply been able to keep up with demand? Certainly, supply chains have been challenged over these last couple of years. But do you believe that technology and supply has kept up with this demand here?
Well, you mentioned the supply chain issues, so certainly, so that I believe that has restrained growth to a degree. I mean, it is still there's always been the zoning permitting stuff, the supply chain of equipment and construction materials, et cetera, and then the labor to both build it and then staff it, right? That's a newer or a development that's particularly a top line concern the last couple of years. So I think that has restrained a little bit of the growth. Um, but I think another side of the coin again is when we think about this, like where could we go from here as an industry with construction? And you get all the time these questions about are we overbuilt? And you've been around long enough to know this overbuilt question has again had cycles of its own, right? Back in the day when the express car wash phenomena 20 years ago was kicking, oh, we have too many car washes. And I think, looking at the number of washes, like what some people call the installed base, how many conveyors are in the US, that is a way to look at it. But that presumes that those stores are all essentially have the same value proposition, quality, and potential. So I think another way to look at it is to say to yourself, how many car washes have been constructed, let's say as an example, in the last 3 to 5 years? And you might argue that is really the competition set in some cases, in some markets, meaning, listen, thanks to architects and developers and real estate folk and the technology and the providers of car wash equipment, the stores just look way better, right? I mean, what we're putting out on the street, not talking about the car, I'm talking about the building even. I mean, it's so much better of late. And I think if you just look at a given town, I'm outside Chicago, you just look at Chicago, let's say Chicago has X number of car washes. I think you have to say, how many contemporarily competitive car washes are in Chicago? That's your competitive set, right? So there could be 1,000 car washes in the Chicago area. How many of them are going to be competitive to what you put out to the customer? And that's why I think you got to look back only maybe, a shorter time frame than since the dawn of car washing. There's sort of two numbers to look at, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and technology, just speaking on technology specifically, membership has certainly pushed technology into new areas, not once incorporated into this industry, whether it be license plate reader or, RFID or the controllers that we see to run some of these express operations. So I'd say that technology has kept pace with supply and getting these nice new car washes open as well.
Yeah, and expect that to accelerate, right? I mean, the less labor, more automation is the way of the world. And so, just in the last month, having visited some stores, I'm hearing the interior cleaning robot, which, I would have said is the craziest thing I've ever heard of. But there's people trying to crack that nut, and so I would expect, yeah, as because there is opportunity in this industry, and because there are challenges to scaling supply chain, labor, permitting, all that stuff. I think people are going to look for every single opportunity to apply technology and talent to make that happen faster. So you're right. More of that to come.
Yeah, for sure. And you could see a lot of that technology and new equipment at the Car Wash Show 2023. We certainly look forward to that, Eric. Carwash.org is where you could find more information. Give you a little plug there.
Nice plug, Rich. Thank you. Checks in the mail.
Do what I can. So it's great to see you again, Eric. Happy holidays. Thanks for taking some time to discuss some of these different trends and dynamics we're seeing in the market, and look forward to seeing you in a few months in Las Vegas.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rich. You take care.